Welcome to the University of Waterloo Safety Office's Guide to Occupational Exposure Limits. We will begin by going over some important terms to know. The first is Occupational Exposure Limit, or OEL. In Ontario, the term Occupational Exposure Limit is used to describe the concentration level of a chemical or physical substance under which a person could be exposed to without experiencing an adverse health effect. The OEL is sometimes referred to as the Threshold Limit Value, or TLV, in other jurisdictions. Occupational exposure limits can be published as a value that is averaged over a period of time, or as an instantaneous hard limit. When the OEL is averaged over a period of time of a workday, or 8 hours, it is termed a time-weighted average limit, or TWA. When the OEL is averaged over 15 minutes, it is considered a short-term exposure limit, or STEL. In cases where the exposure value is an instantaneous value, it is called the ceiling, or C. More on these terms will be found in the next couple of slides. The time-weighted average limit, or TWA limit, is the maximum average airborne concentration of a hazardous material to which healthy adult workers can be exposed to in an 8-hour workday and 40-hour work week, without experiencing significant adverse health effects. Next is the short-term exposure limit, STEL. This is the 15-minute maximum average airborne concentration of a hazardous material to which healthy adult workers can be exposed to for 15 minutes without experiencing significant adverse health effects. The STEL should not be exceeded at any time during the day, even if the TWA is not exceeded. The ceiling value, or C, is the concentration that should not be exceeded during any part of the working exposure. Now that we know these definitions, what are the requirements for being overexposed? If a compound has a TWA limit and a worker's 8-hour average exposure exceeds it, you're considered overexposed. You will also be considered overexposed if the compound has a short-term exposure limit and the worker's average 15-minute exposure exceeds it. And additionally, if a compound has a ceiling limit which has been exceeded. There are a few exceptions to these rules. If a worker's instantaneous exposures are between the TWA limit and the STEL and occurs for less than a total of 15 minutes in a day, less than 4 times in the day, and there's at least 60 minutes between exposures, then the worker will not be considered overexposed. As an example, here we have a graph of an individual's exposure to xylene. We need to find out, is this person overexposed? We can see on the graph that the time-weighted average for this 8-hour exposure was 32.1 ppm. Searching up xylene's SDS, we found that the time-weighted average limit is 100 ppm, and the short-term exposure limit is 150 ppm. Looking at the graph, our 8-hour average is well below the 100 ppm threshold, and we never exceeded the short-term limit of 150 ppm. However, we can see that between the times of 10:45 and 11:30, we exceeded the TWA limit for more than 15 minutes. Therefore, this person is considered overexposed. If you ever have any questions or concerns regarding exposure, please contact your supervisor, and if further clarification is needed, please contact the safety office.